Good evening, pilots. Tonight there is no Freespace. Instead, we're going to be playing another one of my favorite games of all time. This is Urban Assault, a strategy first-person shooter that was released in 1998, basically the same year as Freespace. And yeah, this is not exactly the same sort of game though. So let's start. So basically, you have this entire map that you're eventually going to have to conquer. There are many different civilizations, or should we say races, a couple of humans, mostly aliens, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses. So, right here, I'm going to play you the intro right now.
After the big mistake, radiation has infected much of the Earth's surface. Alien races have invaded, seeking to drain our planet of its energy and destroy all traces of life. Surviving humans have divided into warring factions. Allies are non-existent. Know your enemies. Gorkovs, a monolithic opposition force predating the Toxic Age. Their warcraft is similar to our own, but their weaponry, utilizing electromagnetic impulse, is far more advanced. Myconians, a merciless alien race bent on torture and termination of humanity. The shielding of their hyperspeed warcraft is weak, but their weaponry is the most powerful the world has seen. Virtual presence shift to scout in Myconian sector. Until now, for the Myconians have just unleashed their most deadly weapon yet, the Parasite. By leeching heat from our planet to fuel the Myconian invasion, the Parasite is causing the Earth's core to cool, thus weakening our magnetic field and giving rise to extremes of climate and radiation that have all but guaranteed the annihilation of earthly life. Without your sacrifice, our destruction is certain. All else before you have failed. You are the last and only hope for survival. The Parasite must be destroyed. Prepare for battle. All host station systems online.
Okay, so now that you've seen that, you get an idea of what we're up against. So basically, we start off with your first training mission, which is vehicle creation and control. Mission 2, which is going to be your map and squadron manager. And then finally, training mission 3, Hyde Park. So now we're going to get straight into Hyde Park, because I'm not really going to go through all the training missions. So basically, this is your standard briefing system, where it shows you a general idea of what your map's going to look like. It also shows you all the important things on the map, including the enemy itself and any units that they have pre-deployed. The important thing in this game is a few things. For example, power stations. Those are what keep you alive and also allows you to create more vehicles. And you have, well, let's get into it and you'll actually see what I mean. Okay, so this is basically your map system here. Now, here's your host station here, and these are some vehicles that have already been created. As you can see, your host station isn't exactly large, but as you can see there, at the top there, you have 4 different bars. These 3 are all basically going to be the same, so whenever one goes down, they all go down. So this is your host station's life. If this goes to 0, it's destroyed. This is creation energy, which is used for creating vehicles, and this is your beam energy, which is used for beaming around the map. This one here is for your power station. Right now, we don't have one. So we're going to have to go and get one. So there's one right here. We're going to go and get. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some extra tanks.
Host station under attack.
Ooh, look at that. And your host station can also fight its own battles as well. And certain tanks and helicopters, jeeps and all that, they all have their own abilities as well. And as you can see, the enemy is also starting to do their own thing. There we go. And the thing is that you can actually, any enemy units that are destroyed, you can basically pick up any residue that's left, and you can actually use it to help restore some of your lost hit points. There you go, see, I've taken some damage, so I'm going to pick up that energy. And as you can see, any extra energy that I pick up will also go back to my host station. Not a lot of it, but there is quite a bit. And now that we've taken over that power station, as you'll see in the top left corner, I now have a charge rate.
Under attack.
Unfortunately, at this point in time, I'm not going to be picking up a lot of energy from that power station. But it'll be enough just to hold us for now. And the thing is, the more sectors that we capture that turn back from red to blue, the good news is that that'll also increase what we're capable of. Right now, as you can see, our energy absorption isn't very high. However, what I need to do is I need to beam my host station to where the power station is. Now you see it'll be a lot higher now.
Excellent, Commander. Energy absorption now in progress.
And as you hear there, energy absorption is now in progress.
Now, switch to secondary mission objective. Locate and destroy invading enemy forces.
And the nice thing is that with anything that you create, you have a squadron basically of everything that you create. And now what you can do is, if you wish to, you can actually become the leader of that squadron. In a squadron, the leader will basically, well, they lead the team basically, and every drone that's in that squadron will follow. So now I'm going to press leader, and you'll see that all the tanks will turn to face and actually start following. This is extremely effective if you're trying to do a proper attack on these kinds of guys. And they will also assist in firing. Unfortunately, their refire rate and all that isn't going to be as high as yours, but however, the more tanks you got, the better. So now, let's go after the enemy host station. Now unfortunately, the Fox isn't exactly the best thing for taking on enemy host stations, because these are more anti-air than anti-tank. However, thankfully this is just a training mission, so the enemy host station isn't going to have a hell of a lot of energy to start with. And also, as you see, the enemy host station is going straight for me. Ow. So now I'm going to go pick up some residue. Ooh, destroyed. Now as you see, when you're destroyed, you can basically jump into the next available unit. And there we go. Now the cool thing is that when the enemy host station is destroyed, any units that they've created will also be destroyed, and any sectors that they have will now become yours.
By conquering beam gate key sectors that appear as flashing red symbols on your map.
So now, right now, I need to conquer sectors.
Key sector captured.
Now you see, now in order to go to the next level, you basically have to capture what's called beam gate key sectors. Now these are extremely important though, because in order to go to the next field of battle, you have to conquer every one of them. However, if you happen to lose one along the way, you will have to reconquer it. There we go.
Beam gate open.
Now as we can see now on our map, we now tell them to go here.
inside, beam gates.
Now, as you see there's a 0 out of 3,000. So that is the amount of energy, basically, of units that I can actually send. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and send as many tanks there as possible. So that means that's less for me to create the next time in the next round. So let's get all of our tanks there and let's take them all through to the next level.
The resistance front needs you. Beam out host station now.
So as you see there, I've got 2,090 out of 3,000. So I'm just going to continue just to keep creating tanks and keep sending them their way. The thing is, with each level as well, your reservoir will actually go up slightly as well. Eventually you'll be able to create things like defensive flak stations, power stations, and the nice thing is that one of the big things that you want to make sure you capture are what's called tech upgrade sectors. Those will give you your tech upgrades. It'll either be vehicles, armor or weapon upgrades, and even buildings as well, which are exceptionally important. 2850, that'll be enough. So let's beam our host station on top and begin the process. Now they're all beaming out now. Now for debriefing. So now basically that tells me how many I killed and how many was killed in total, and that includes host station and my drones, and that's how many they've managed to destroy. So not a lot. So now we've opened up two sections here, either Skull Alley or Virgin Steel. So I'm gonna go Virgin Steel, and this just gives you a little bit of everything here. And as you can see, there's the enemy station there. As you can see that they will have pre-deployed units. Just like with every map, we will always have pre-deployed units, unless something really bad happens and there's absolutely nothing. Okay. Sometimes as well, it doesn't always show if there is a tech upgrade on the area. So one thing that's very important, look out for those. So I'm gonna send these guys forward and let them start. Sure, again, like I said, these tanks aren't exactly built for going up against other tanks. However, in numbers, it really doesn't make much difference.
Enemy destroyed.
So in cases like this, for example, you've got your missiles that you can fire, and then you've also got a machine gun as well. Using them both together, very effective, and the nice thing is machine guns can, in most cases, go through buildings and things. But in the case of the Fox, for example, where they're very helpful and lucky, they have missiles they can actually track.
Hostiles neutralized.
So I'm just going to hit leader for now, so then all my drones can come towards me. As you can see there, as long as it's line of sight, my machine gun will continue to do damage. Kind of broken in that sense, but it works. Uh-oh.
Enemy sector entered. Enemy destroyed.
So all bit by bit, my drones will eventually come to me. The nice thing about being in the tank itself, instead of just telling them what to do all the time, you can physically take control, and then speed, your fire rate, armor, all of that goes up. Thankfully this enemy host station isn't exactly tough. The one that comes later, a lot more powerful. But for now, as you can see there, I have just gained a tech upgrade, the Jaguar.
Welcome back.
Now compared to the Fox, the Jaguar, much more powerful. If you select here and you check out what units you've got a list here of what they're good for. So as you can see, the Fox is good against planes, bombers, and helicopters, and slightly conquering sectors. Whereas host stations and tanks, it only gets a 1 for. Whereas the Jaguar gets a 2 for host stations, 3 against tanks. However, against planes and bombers, it only gets a 1, and against helicopters, only 2. But yet it's good for sectors, conquering sectors as well. So let's add a few units to there. It's always good to try and send out as many of these guys as possible. What's this guy doing?
You have control.
Unfortunately, the AI can sometimes be a bit weird. They'll just sometimes just go off on their own. So it helps just to watch them.
Welcome back.
You have control.
As you can see as well, the Jaguar is also, it's a bit slower, but of course it's missile. See, it fires like a burst shot of 2 before it has to reload. However, its health and arm and shielding as well is also a lot higher than the Fox, so it definitely makes it more worthwhile going against enemy host stations and tanks.
You have control.
Also, you'll hear the little voice there as well. So for light tanks, medium tanks, and heavy tanks will all be different. Same as when you get to helicopters and jets, bombers, all of that. They'll all be different. So a little bit of flair there. And also, the buildings can also be destroyed. If most buildings take enough damage, they will eventually crumble, but certain things cannot be destroyed, like these, for example, cannot be destroyed.
Welcome back.
Probably useful in that sense. Alright, let's jump out. Move on to the next place. Alright, so I didn't get as many kills here though, but at least I acquired the Jaguar. Thank goodness. So the checkerboard's now open, but I'm going to go with Skull Alley. These early missions are pretty quick to get through though. Eventually there are going to be some maps that take hours to complete. That's just the thing. Alright, begin.
Outstation systems online.
Order
We'll just
confirmed.
have everyone move forward.
You have control.
Okay, so I didn't take the leader's role, but that's fine. The one thing to always look out for, like I said, is very important, is tech upgrade sectors, and there's one right here. So this one will give me,
New vehicle technology upgrade captured.
so I've got the Weasel. As you can see, all the resistance vehicles are all based on animals. Now the Weasel is like
Hostiles
a
neutralized.
much faster and much more, how should I say, persistent version of the Fox. Ooh. As you can see, these helicopters are specifically designed for destroying tanks though, but the problem is they can't take much damage themselves.
Sector entered. Hostiles neutralized.
So I want to just try to thin out as many of the units as possible.
Enemy sector entered.
The one thing to also be careful of as well is that those helicopters, they have 3 different versions of. The Gargoyle 1, then they have the much more deadlier Gargoyle 2, which is that one I'm firing on now. That one fires 2 missiles at once. And yeah, tanks get shredded by those.
Hostiles neutral.
I barely survived that one. But eventually, once you also start picking up armor upgrades as well. Ooh, that was a close one.
Vector achieved. Request new order.
But the good news is as well, is that when you take them out, you also get back more hit points as well. And that's the thing with this kind of game, is that you can actually survive so long just by taking out enemies and just absorbing what's material. They call this basically terraforming units. Or plasma terraforming.
Enemy tank. Hostiles neutralized.
There we go.
Enemy station sighted. We have range.
So now I'm going to hit the leader button. So they must all follow me now.
Enemy destroyed.
Yeah, generally not a good idea to take on so many enemy helicopters. Especially if they were gargoyle too. But thankfully these ones are not too much of a threat.
Enemy sector entered. Enemy
I'm going to
tank
take this power station so long. And because I'm firing on it, my drones will also fire on it as well.
Enemy sector entered. Hostiles neutralized.
So I'm going to beam right here. And let's add some weasels. As you can see, these things are tiny little things.
You have control.
Only 30 damage versus the 100 on the Fox though. But as you can see, these things are extremely speedy.
Station sighted.
So the nice thing is that these are actually perfect for conquering sectors and also being a decent little scout.
We have enemy contact.
And as you can see, the enemy will always attack the leader. And as you can see there, they'll all go straight for it. Yeah, I was supposed to think they were going to fry me there. Alright, everyone. And even firing on an area as well will also count as telling them to move there.
You have control.
And that's why often just jumping into a vehicle itself, you'll actually find that you can actually move faster than the others of the same type. It's just for some reason having personal control over them actually just is much better. Alright, that's just about everyone. I'm prepared to jump. Come on.
You have control.
See, sometimes the AI gets stuck on things like this.
Beam gate open.
Ah, but it's still fine.
You have control.
As you can see, the host station has its own guns for dealing with problems. Not the most powerful guns though, but eventually they do get their own upgrades. Alright, moving on to the next one. So now I can either go with surprise or checkerboard. Now checkerboard, I'll show you what the flak stations look like. It's a patchwork of resistance and Gorkovian sectors. See then, sometimes they tell you if there's actually new things out here. So, our new Wasp fighter copter. The Wasp is similar to the Gargoyle one though, the only difference is it's much more maneuverable. But unfortunately its missile isn't exactly, how should we put it, tracking like the Fox or the Gargoyles. You'll see soon enough. Alright.
Postal station systems activated.
So here we have flak stations. A good idea with flak stations,
Post station under attack.
it's good to actually jump, it's actually a good idea to jump into the flak stations themselves, because that way you can fire on enemies a hell of a lot quicker. And in these early missions as well, where you don't have access to build these, it's actually quite helpful.
Guns up, let's move.
Oh, hello.
Vector achieved. Request new orders.
New vehicle technology upgrade captured.
We have enemy contact.
See, what they may not do as much damage though, they're
We
actually
have range on enemy tank.
in numbers. The little weasels can actually do a hell of a lot of damage, especially in numbers. But for now,
We have enemy contact.
I'm going to take that power station. So you just keep firing on it until eventually it turns your color.
Enemy sector entered. Power station down.
However, you don't want to fire on it too much
Power
though,
station under attack.
because
Enemy payload retreating.
and even though I don't have a targeting retina, the good news is that these flak stations have pretty insane range on them. And now that I've got that power station, I want to conquer some sectors, so at least then.
Acknowledged.
So now,
Power station under attack.
they may not look very formidable though, but their missiles are decent.
Captured.
See, these are more dumbfire type missiles, so unfortunately, you've got to be pretty darn accurate with these.
Enemy destroyed.
And unfortunately, see, they've got these extremely quick and nimble sort of flak stations. The good news is, just like with all the other enemy units, you can also take the plasma energy there as well. And you get quite a lot of health back as well for that. So let's have everyone go here. Also the wasps.
Welcome aboard.
You have to worry about. You can crash into things if you want to. It won't do any damage. But the one thing you'll also notice as well, the more shots that you actually take, it actually lowers your health with every shot that you take. So that's kind of a useful mechanic. So you can't just be firing missiles off all willy-nilly. No.
Beam gate open.
So I like the fact that this adds like a nice strategy sort of feel to it, and as well as a first-person shooter. Alright, so now that we've done that, let's move on to surprise. Because they always have little bits of tidbits here and stuff like that, which is quite nice. Ooh, and look at that, we got ourselves a new enemy. So we've got an enemy Gorkov station like right on top of us here. However, our main enemy is here. These guys here, their technology is pretty old looking. It kind of looks like World War I sort of tech. However, extremely heavily armored. Okay, these are their medium tanks, and their medium tanks are still one-on-one. Probably a bit more powerful than our Jags, definitely. So these guys you got to be very careful for.
Power station system online. Power station under attack. Enemy post station destroyed.
Since this guy took some damage, I'm just going to. So in these cases, the best way to do anything is take control. As you can see, these helicopters are insane. And even if you can't hit them with your missile, you've still got your machine gun. So long as you stay within range, you'll always hit them. since they have no power station, they have no way of actually restoring any lost health. There we go. It looks like we were able to conquer the... Beautiful. There we go, full health. Now we can move on to the other enemy station. So let's move everyone into position and... yeah. Because with these guys, you've got to be very careful. Like I said, because of their heavy armor, they could be exceptional nuisances. That's why you're going to try and take them out as early as possible out of this one. But thankfully, we now have... as you can see, these guys seem to have the same sort of flag stations. That's why in cases like this, it's actually a fantastic idea just to move around. Keep them trying to...
Armor technology upgrade captured.
There you go, now you see armor upgrades. The good news with armor, it's fantastic, is because not only does it make it that it takes a lot more to kill you, your actual health goes up with every upgrade. So whether it is a weapon upgrade or armor upgrade, health goes up every single time.
We have enemy contact.
So even though these weasels aren't exactly anti-tank, the good news about them is that if you have a ton of them, it doesn't really matter. Even if they're only doing 30 damage, it doesn't matter.
Enemy contact.
Key sector captured.
Enemy station sighted.
Key sector lost.
See, for here, I would prefer the helicopter. Reason being, see, the enemy might be powerful though, but unfortunately, it takes them quite a while to actually track you. So here, their biggest weakness is right here. And you just hang out there, taking them out. Absolutely fantastic. Oh, this little guy's stuck. Ooh, yeah, that did some damage. And that's the thing. If you actually fall from heights, yeah, you can take damage. Might be the quickest way to get around, though.
Target acquired.
Beam gate open.
Input required.
Okay.
Welcome
So
back.
now, the one thing that we did get was what's called a scout. Now with these, they're basically spy cams. So you can deploy these to different areas where you can't actually see what's going on the map. And they will actually reveal the area.
Spy cam deployed.
These are very effective, especially if you are trying to figure out what's going on. And also in cases like this where you're trying to find, say, a power station. Because like right now, we don't have a power station. So I've expended some energy, and now technically I would need to restore that. Thankfully, this scout down here has done a fantastic job of showing me where there's one.
Beam gate open.
Few shots to that, and it will be ours. Conquer some sectors. As we can see, this is the enemy Gorkovs.
Power station captured.
There you go. Alright, so now I can move back. And I'll be in our station on top. And as you can see, we already have 100% coverage here, which is perfect. The thing is, the more powerful power stations will require more sectors to be conquered. Every block that you see on your power station means that you need 8 sectors, 8 16 sectors to be 100%. So, if you're having some power stations that have like 8 and 10 blocks, you need a lot of sectors.
Back.
Moving out.
Come on, everyone, move in there, move in there.
I am requesting input.
Welcome aboard.
So like currently now, we've got 925 energy units. Whereas we're fighting enemies that already have 3 and maybe 4,000. And their energy levels go up a lot faster than yours. So that's why in cases like this, you've got to try and take as many units as possible. That is going up insanely quick. Anyway, it's a bug I get sometimes. Look at these guys, we're getting stuck on something. See, stuck on a building.
Open.
Welcome aboard.
Let's land it. Looks like someone's gonna get left behind. It's a single jag. So I'll take as many as possible. Yeah, there's a lot of different tanks, jets, helicopters, there's all sorts. And they all have their own specific purpose in the game. Cool. Next. And you see, that's the thing. And sometimes you'll have it where you try a different one level, you can't get past it, so then you have to go to another one. It happens. Don't stress too much. So in a case like this, I'm going to try out Fort Grenada. This is also going to be one with the Tarkastan. See these here, these Leonids here, you could probably recognize them. They look like those old World War I sort of tanks. But these things are insane. They're extremely hard to kill though. They are basically just armor on top of armor. These things here are absolute pains in the butts, these things. They're basically flying missiles. They can't actually fire off any missiles or anything. They are the missile. So basically it's a suicide unit. So I'm pretty sure StarCraft fans would understand what those are. And as you see there, we get nothing this time around. Okay, so our energy level is up to 1150.
Welcome aboard.
So let's take a quick look, see? Oh, look at that. Tech upgrade.
New vehicle technology upgrade captured.
Now, see what I mean? Even though my missile's doing 200 points of damage, that thing has just got so much armor that that thing just doesn't care. It doesn't care. However, these medium tanks though, thankfully, these do go down a lot easier. So that Hornet that I've just now picked up, now those are much more effective now against the enemy tanks. However, what they do make up for in overall damage, unfortunately, because they are a much more powerful copter, they do sacrifice speed and maneuverability. As you can see there, they never hit me once. But because of the amount I was firing off, my own copter was taking damage just from firing off a missile. Hopefully at least the machine gun still does some damage. Not a hell of a lot there, but... Now the one thing is as well, is if you manage to take an enemy unit down to like critical health, they will actually break off their attack and actually go back to their host station. That's the thing about them.
Traversing hostile sector.
And I'm gonna try and... Ow.
Bandits engaged. Stay frosty. Traversing hostile sector.
Ow.
Adversaries eliminated. Traversing hostile sector. Enemy contact.
Yeah, that didn't turn out as well as I was hoping it was gonna, but oh well. As you can see there, the Jag, much more suited for this kind of work. Although it's not a lot, may as well pick up what little bit of energy we can. As you can see on this level, no power station. So this is one of those levels that you've got to actually really think your strategies out. Because if you stuff up, that's game over. And you've got to repeat the level. As you can see, look at these things. These things look a hell of a lot more armored. So 150 hit points and 65% armor, and check that missile is 450 damage. So yes, definitely much more powerful than the Wasp. Eventually though, with your tech upgrades, the Wasp eventually picks up a double missile upgrade. So it then goes from 200 damage to 400 damage. Then it becomes my favorite in the entire game. Makes it so maneuverable.
Welcome back.
Yeah, it can just do whatever it wants.
You have control.
And like I said, I wasn't kidding about these things being quick. These, I wouldn't say are the fastest in the game, but I'd say these things rank second when it comes to fast tanks. The Gorkovs have one called the Speedy. That thing's quick. Weirdly enough, even though it's classed as a light tank, it still gets a 2 against tanks, especially in numbers, because it is pretty insane.
Beam gate open.
Very nice. As you can see, I actually got most of the kills on that level. Not bad. As you can see, I'm opening up a lot more areas now. So now we're going to focus on Dark Valley. Now these kinds of maps are some of my favorites though, because they're not insanely large though, they're just long. Ooh, that did not come out right. Anyway, we've got quite a few tech upgrades on this level. Here's the enemy host station. Now also on this level, they've added something called the Studson bomb. Now basically kind of like key sectors for your beam gates, you basically pick those up and then the actual station itself. And then after so many minutes, when it detonates, it takes out all the buildings and also all enemies. So enemy units, enemy host stations, flak stations, everything. It basically takes out everything that isn't you. So it's very helpful to get to that as soon as possible. As you can see, we've only got 3 minutes on the clock. So everyone needs to move now.
Target acquired.
There's some power stations.
Target acquired. Target acquired. Target acquired.
And there's our target right there.
Power station captured. Target acquired. Target acquired.
Now you'll watch now. Once they've conquered that, this will actually all stop.
Studson, bomb, stopped.
Vector achieved. Request new orders. Guns up, let's move. We have range on enemy tango. Vector achieved.
Now these here are also some pretty insane tanks.
Hostiles.
So they're classed as heavy tanks, but weirdly enough their movement speed actually puts them faster than a medium tank.
We have enemy contact.
See, for me, my playstyle is this. I try to have as many different types of vehicles at once. So I like to have my light tanks, medium tanks, helicopters, everyone together. You can have as many different squadrons as you want, but I like to try and keep everyone together, because that way they can all make up for each other's weaknesses. I'm trying to conquer some sectors while I'm at it.
We have enemy contact.
As you can see, I've got myself a tailgater.
Enemy destroyed.
Yeah, those speeds you got to be very careful of. Those things are insane when it comes to being. And that's an enemy bomber. That's the actual Gargoyle 3.
Kill confirmed. Traversing hostile sector. Power station captured.
Welcome
Yeah,
back.
as you can see, those bombers.
On our way.
Not
Power station lost.
Switching to attack vector. Welcome aboard. We have range on enemy tango.
oh, look at that.
Armor technology upgrade captured.
Look at that. Already we're getting armor upgrades for the Jag.
Enemy tank. Hostile.
Oh.
Enemy.
See, with a lot of the Gorkov vehicles, like the Speedy for example, it doesn't fire missiles or anything like that. What it fires is EMP bursts, because the Gorkovs have figured out actually how to utilize EMPs. So that makes their tech pretty insane. Thankfully, a lot of their stuff is still conventional. So even though the Wasp itself isn't designed for going after,
Enemy contact.
even though it's not,
Under attack.
even though it's not designed for going after things like
Power
this,
station
it
under attack.
does pretty well.
Power station under attack.
Now my host station's obviously under
Power
attack though,
station
but
under attack. Power station under attack.
Enemy station sighted.
Power station under attack. Welcome back.
We have range on enemy tango. Enemy target acquired.
now one thing that you can also set as well
Enemy contact.
is what's called the aggression level. You have 1 to 5. 1 means retreat, 5 means just go completely apeshit. However, 2 is actually a useful one, because what happens is it basically tells your units to go after a sector or a unit or something like that, and they will ignore everything else.
Activated.
Oh, there we go, and I got an upgrade for the host station.
Welcome back.
So everyone can go here.
After Roger.
So while it gives these guys time to make their way there.
Squad standing by.
Let's add a few wasps. And also, if you want to, you can actually go into the scout itself. So now this is the actual Studson bomb itself. So you'll actually see when it goes off though, it's a very interesting sort of explosion.
Open.
It's more of a shockwave sort of explosion. That's why I want to try and create as many units as possible. Just be careful when assigning units to squadrons and you don't assign them to the wrong one. One thing that you can also do is you can actually drag a box like that, and that'll also put everyone in the same group as well. 56 units.
Beam gate open.
Little ants. But that's the thing about them though, they will attack in numbers. And especially in levels where you have like virtually no sectors conquered. You just build one of those guys and you just start conquering sectors as much as possible. Ignore enemy units and just conquer sectors. That way, your power stations will thank you.
Beam gate open. Studson bomb triggered.
You see what I mean? Takes out even my buildings. So as you see there, it just starts conquering. So it's like the perfect thing to actually get all your sectors. So what you do is once you have the ability to build power stations, you basically set that off and then you create power stations after that. So now if I was an enemy unit and this thing went off, there's nothing you can do to stop it. If you have enough energy and you actually can see the rest of the map, you might be able to beam over it, but even that's only like a 50-50 chance that it actually works. So as you can see here, we got ourselves a nice range of pretty much everything that can handle just about anything. Base stations, tanks, all of that. And helicopters. So we got the Scout, the Jaguar, and then the gun turret. And then, there you go. Okay, so now there's quite a selection of different maps now. The one that's good to go with is this one here, Drac, which is you can all see what part of the map this is. This is actually the level where you will actually pick up your first bit of power station technology. It's quite an hectic one as well. Okay, as you can see here, engineering request, Central AI reports a technology upgrade for creating power stations. This is your most crucial acquisition to date. Marshal all resources to gain it. So here we're taking on 2 enemies at once. And just like in the previous level, there's also a Stutzen bomb on this level, so got to be very careful. The enemy's got so many units pre-deployed, it's actually somewhat unfair. Now for my units. Okay. So now these here are also tall class planes. These are like your, how should we say? As you can see, these things are insane attackers, these things. I wasn't going to let them take this flag station, no way, no how.
You have control.
And you see, just because I jumped into the flag station, all of a sudden my radar actually went up and I was able to pick them up. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create some units.
We have enemy contact.
Here.
Acknowledge.
Just get these guys just to come in and make themselves useful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go after the yellow guys. And as you can see, the flag stations push these guys all over the place. Alright, so I'm going to have everyone move this side solo. Unfortunately, this not so good at taking on these kinds of planes. That's why here you've got to rely on all of your different units. And the thing is that if the enemy flies above, yeah, then that's a problem. The enemy just focuses on me, and it's my other units. So you see right now, the enemy's going to be focusing on me right now, allowing my other units to actually make some headway. But just be careful, you might shoot down your own units, so the problem is friendly fire is something that can happen, whether you want it to or not. Ooh, wow. Did you see the little weasel here? It's a little bit more suited for these planes. However, thankfully the Hornet is a little bit better.
Enemy contact inbound. Enemy bandits, turn and tail.
Again, they may not be the best thing for taking on these planes.
Enemy destroyed. You have
Building technology and power station under attack.
we have range on
And
enemy
what you can
tango.
also do here,
Power station lost.
Enemy tango retreating. We have enemy contact.
so while his focus is on the others, I'll continue to keep firing. Bingo.
Coast station destroyed.
Order confirmed.
Here we go.
Enemy tank acknowledged.
Yeah, the medium tanks, unfortunately, they do their own things half the time, so you gotta watch out for those ones. Okay, so now that we only have one enemy to worry about, these flag stations are utterly terrible. They got such a fast fire rate. And the take upgrade.
Weapon technology upgrade captured.
So we've gone from 30 damage to 32. May not seem like much though, but again, every bit helps. So basically, trying to thin them out as best as possible. And then
Coast station under attack.
thin their forces out as best as we can.
Power station under attack.
Power station captured. Enemy tangos retreating. Hostile. Roger. We have commit on target. Switching to attack vector.
Power station lost. Coast station under attack.
They must have taken over that tall cost one.
Order confirmed. Hostiles neutralized. We have enemy contact. We have range on enemy tank.
I was actually hoping those weren't heavy tanks, because then we wouldn't have stood a bloody chance.
Coast station under attack.
Enemy destroyed.
Power station under attack.
We have enemy contact.
Welcome back. Power station under power station lost.
You have control. You have control. We have enemy contact. You have control. Power station captured. Enemy destroyed. Enemy tank. We have enemy contact. Enemy.
So you see, it's very important that you try and keep your power stations online, because without those,
Power station
game
under attack.
over.
You have control. Moving to intercept. You have control. Enemy sector attack. We have range on enemy tango.
As you can see there, all units lost.
Spy cam deployed.
beautiful. I love these helicopters.
Power station, post station under attack.
Adversaries eliminated. Heli squad standing by. You have control.
The only problem with the host station's guns, they don't really have the best sort of range on them.
Enemy tangos retreating.
So you have to complement all of that.
We have enemy contact. We have range on enemy tango.
Because unfortunately these Gargoyle 2s,
We have range
while
on
being
enemy
anti-tank, they also have a +2 against host stations. So yeah, they can be very deadly, especially if they get in too close.
We have enemy contact. We have range on enemy tango.
Under attack.
Sometimes you just gotta
You have
cut
control.
your
Power
losses.
station lost.
You have control. You have control. Power station captured. We have enemy contact. We have enemy contact. You have control. You have control. Enemy tangos retreating.
So I'm just going to use my impressive range to try and take these guys out before they get too close. I try to focus on multiple units at once, that way they will become disorientated.
Enemy tangos retreating.
Post station under attack.
Adversaries eliminated.
Try to pick up as much of this as possible. So every bit helps.
Welcome back.
So now that I've done that, I can also create another power station.
Power station online.
What you want to do is you want to jump over the one. As you can see, this one's putting out slightly more than the other. Put some
We
scouts
have
out
enemy
here
contact.
so I can see what is going on.
Welcome aboard. Engaging enemy bandits.
Like I did say, some of these levels can take quite a while.
We have enemy contact.
I can request input.
And as long as any of your units are also within range of a power station, your health will also continuously regenerate as well. So, yeah.
Enemy tangos retreating.
Also, if you are in an enemy sector and you're by their power station, you could also lose health just by being in their sector and your nearby power station. Yeah.
We have enemy contact. Enemy tangos retreating.
Conquer some
I
more
can
sectors.
request input.
Engaging enemy bandits.
Try and stay out of range of their.
Bullseye. Kill confirmed. Heli squad avoiding vector.
Oh, yeah, I took a hit there.
We have enemy contact. Adversaries
if you do see enemy scouts, try and take them out as well.
Visual on enemy station.
Also, try and fire on enemy. Try and fire on enemy power stations, especially early in the game, because they don't have the ability to build power stations, yet they have no way of replacing the ones that you destroy. And if they can't replace their power stations, again, game over.
Welcome aboard. Heli squad standing by.
I can request input.
My energy is too good to go to waste.
Traversing hostile sector. We have enemy contact.
Again, every little bit helps. Ah, there we go. That's something interesting. Well, that Speedy was trying to fire on me, but obviously
Traversing hostile sector. We have enemy contact.
I can request input.
Traversing hostile sector.
damage them as much as possible. Now I'm going to go and take out their power station. Take out their scouts as well, so they can't actually see what's coming. Later on you'll be able to build radar stations, but until then, you are completely dependent on scouts. This is a...
Power station captured.
Yeah, I don't want to capture it.
I can request input.
Power station lost. Power station
See, what I want to try and do is I want to try and destroy this one. Now, unfortunately, the Wasp is not suited for this kind of work. The problem is this enemy station, it's got such a high refire rate on it, it actually makes it almost impossible to actually get in close. Sometimes you get lucky.
Welcome back. Post station under attack.
We have range on enemy tango.
Go get him, Weasels.
Acknowledged.
So now you'll probably find the enemy host station. What they're going to try and do now, since they do have another power station that they did conquer, they're probably going to try and slowly, bit by bit, try and move to that power
I
station.
can request input.
Hopefully I've done enough damage to prevent that.
Traversing hostile sector.
Weapon technology upgrade captured.
Okay, so now the Fox's got a little bit more oomph. Should have seen that one
You
coming.
have control. We have enemy contact. You have control.
See, how does he get stuck in the building? I don't understand. I think due to the amount of damage I must have done to them, I don't think
Enemy contact.
they're going to have too much energy
Enemy tango
spear.
retreating. Enemy tango's retreating.
if I attack early
Enemy
enough.
tango's retreating.
I can.
We have enemy contact.
Especially if you're struggling to find out where the enemy host station is. Sometimes you can actually just follow the units that are escaping back to base.
Enemy Tango
There it
retreat.
is. Sometimes you can also hear for it as well.
Enemy station sighted.
Gotcha. Oh, there was nothing left. Seriously, I could have pissed in his general direction and he would have been destroyed. Alright, so that's fine.
Spy cam deployed. Spy.
Order confirmed.
As you can see, they will basically follow a path. Now, if they were just the helicopters, they would just go as straight as the crow flies, but in this case, the tanks have to go the long way around.
Advised.
You have control.
Now, the Fox originally had 95 hit points. You'll now see that because of the armor the armor upgrade, so it's now on 97. And that's the thing. More armor upgrades, health, weapon upgrades, that's the thing. That's what eventually makes these vehicles pretty insane. Eventually the Fox will get a double missile upgrade, but that's only much later game.
Beam gate open.
But even though I had all those tons of units though, the problem is if they're not coordinated and doing what they're supposed to be doing, as you can see they can get wiped out pretty quickly. See, when I was taking on the enemy Tarkar station, what I should have done is set everyone to go for the station and set their aggression level to 2, which means that they will only focus on that and nothing else.
Welcome back.
What was that? Oops.
Beam gate open.
Still got 2 minutes still to kill.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome back.
Eventually what I'll do is I'll move over here once the bomb goes off, and then I will create a power station or 2 and then continue just to keep building units and take those to the next level.
Beam gate open.
So if you look at the difference between the Wasp, so it's 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2. Hornet, it's basically a +1 against everything except planes and bombers. But still the Hornet, which also eventually gets a double missile upgrade. So that's a shit ton of damage being thrown around. But it's still not even the most powerful of all the helicopters that you will eventually get.
Beam gate open.
Okay, here it is.
Studson bomb triggered.
See, my flag station is taken
Welcome
out.
back.
Kinda think I should have waited on that one.
Beam gate
Oh,
open.
it's fine. Oh, yeah, that's so important to have enough energy just to build a single power station. And unfortunately, you can't transfer from one section to another. It just will not allow that. Alright, so now I've got new area now, but that's fine. I think for now we'll leave this at that. You know, it's not completed all in one go, and then I'll definitely be putting some more of these together. Maybe I'll play some more tomorrow. But until then, everyone, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon.